Hey BookTube, how's it going? This is way better. Um, I started this video a second ago and it was all choppy. Um, Kept freezing. But I do want to thank everybody who showed up last night for the live stream for the podcast. That was super cool and I had a lot of fun talking about Barsoom and Foundation. So if you haven't um, check that out yet, it's still on the YouTube channel. I don't know if I'm going to keep it on there. I might take it down. I don't know. But I wanted to update you on my readings for the hard-boiled and noir for Pentathon, and we'll do that last. Ugh. So, I, in this book, read a story by James M. Cain called Pastoral on 491. This one is super short. And in the little introduction that they do before each story, it says, like, it is cheating a little to use pastoral in the omnibus of Pulp Fiction because it was originally published in the March 1938 issue of the American Mercury, which, as one of the leading intellectual journals of its time, was anything but pulpy. Now, this story to me really doesn't feel like James Cain. Like it almost feels like someone he knew wrote it and he put his name on it so they could sell it, kind of thing. I know I've been throwing that around a lot lately, that writers weren't writing their stuff. I don't know what's wrong with me, but like, to me, Cain is like kind of sparse with his descriptions, but totally sparse with his dialogue. And in everything of his I read, he likes to use his dialogue. And in this, it's just some dude telling a story. And it there's like no dialogue. It's just this dude telling a story. And it's the one thing that is kind of James Cainish about it is that it's a story about a guy who does something really stupid for a girl. So there's that. That's a big. The video's like Frozen. At least what I'm seeing. So this was okay for it being so short. I kind of don't care that it wasn't like mind blowing, but like, if this was the first thing I read by James Cain, I would never read another James Cain thing. And for the Mercury being such an intellectual paper, it's weird to have a story that is so, well, probably not. Faulkner was huge at the time, I guess, but it's like, I don't even want to call it Southern Gothic. Like, it's like the dialogue is very, or not the dialogue, but the narration is very dip dip boop biddly boop, words that aren't words, doop. So that's what I read out of this one. Wasn't great. Okay, now, computer, I know that right now, for some reason, you're having a really hard time okay? But I need you to focus and just catch up with what I'm doing because it's really distracting. And I'm trying to make a video here for the good people of BookTube, and you are making this really difficult. And I want us to, continue our friendship and get along really good. But I feel like you're kind of coming between me and my friends. So I need you to shape up or, heaven forbid, ship out. Okay, let's get back to what I'm doing here. Don't ship out. Please don't leave me. Okay. So then I picked up my good old big book of Black Mask, and I read a couple out of here. Let's see. Where was it? Oh, wait, is there a bookmark in here? There is. Okay. So, what I love about this book is you don't only get the stories, but you get the artwork that went along with them in Black Mask. So, like, look at that. That's awesome. Okay. Oh, that's so cool. So, I read Odds on Death by Don M. Mankiewicz. And this is a story being told. It's a first-person story because the narrator's in it, but it's about this other guy. It's about a gambler who shoots craps, and the guy telling the story is the dealer, the stick man. And it's not a long story. It's like, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages long. But it's one of those stories that the whole story is just a setup for the last line in the story that's a punchline. And it might be dated, but those stories rarely work for me. Like, rarely. And when I'm reading like 10 pages of like 2 columns a page kind of thing, and I'm reading all of this stuff just to get to like a punchline, it's like infuriating to me. Especially when it's not funny. So the story was good up until that bit. But then I read Those Catrini by Norvell Page. Now, Norvell Page, I love because he was the main writer for a hero pulp called The Spider that I really like. He wrote under the house name Grant Stockbridge, and wrote the majority of those books. And they are so much fun. And in this one, it was like inspiring to me. Like Jules Tremaine. He's a, like, it's like Bourbon Street area, New Orleans, and he's like he takes his guitar and plays on the street. Not so much to hear music or not to play music, but to like be the eyes and ears of the town and see what's going down, so he could like butt in. And it's really cool. Like, it's typical like pulp pacing where this happens, and then that happens. So the guy runs out and runs into this guy, and then this happens, and then he has to go here, and then this happens. So now he's forced to do this, but it's like it just feels so good when you're reading it. The pacing's great, and the ending was so ridiculous. I don't know if you'll ever read this, so I'm just gonna tell you because like I had to go back and reread it because I was like, what the fuck just happened? So basically, what this is about is this chick comes up to him and she's like, hey, you gotta help me. Those damn Catrini. Like, everyone, when they talk about the Catrini family, I guess, they want to just start yelling and cussing about, like, how fucked they are and stuff. But I guess her husband is a truck driver, and the Catrini people are beating him up because they don't want him to like do his shipments, because they're trying to put a stranglehold on the company that he's working for or whatever. So now they don't have any money, and if they don't have any money, they can't eat, and if they can't eat, they can't live, and blah 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 blah. So he's like, "Oh, okay, I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it." And then he's like, "I'll come over to your house and talk to you guys in a bit when I'm done here." And she's like, "Okay." So she leaves, and then pa 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 pa, and they're dead. Okay. So he runs over there to see it because he hears the shots or whatever and hears people screaming. And when he is coming out, there's a cop there and they arrest him for murdering the two people. So then he goes to the precinct and he's like in the chief's office, and the chief makes them take the handcuffs off, and he's like, "I'm so sorry, they didn't know who you were, blah 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 blah." And you're like, okay, who is this guy that the cops are like letting him off of this? And it turns out his brother is like high up in the department, or mayor or something like that. That bit wasn't super clear to me, but because of who his brother is, he got off. And so then he goes back to the street, and the cop that arrested him comes up and tries to like strong arm him, and he just like plays along with him, feeding him rope kind of deal. And it turns out the cops working for the Catrini. And then he's like, "Oh yeah, but this guy has a job for you if you want it." And he's like, "Oh, that's so sweet of you to be thinking of me," and blah 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 blah. So then they go, and they're in a car, and he has guns on him. He's being driven somewhere. They go on like a gravel road that's all bumpy, and he's like, "Can you please uncock that gun? Because I'm afraid it's going to go off," because the car's like. And then they're like, "Oh, get out of the car. This is where we stop." And they're out in the middle of nowhere. So he's freaking out. He starts to get out of the car, and then he still has his guitar, by the way. Like, it's with him the whole time. He, like, hits the dude in the face with the guitar and jumps out of the car and counts to 5, and there's this huge explosion. Okay? And I'm like, what the F just happened? And he's like, okay, so they're gone. Now I just have to get the cop. And then he looks down at his hand and sees a metal ring hanging from his finger. And he's like, "It's a good thing I brought that grenade. But it looks like I'm going to have to get a new guitar now." And I'm like, what? He had a fucking grenade? Like, who just like happens to have a grenade on him when they're like hanging out on the street? So that was like one of the most bizarre endings I've ever read, because there was no like build to why he would have a grenade on him. And it's funny, I guess, but and then we don't ever see him go after the cop. He's just like, well, I got to go get the cop now. And so the whole thing was just a little weird, but it was so fun when it was going. And it was like, this is what I wanted to read. You know, this is where I was wanting to go. And the last two things I read were more of just like hard people from hard walks of life doing hard stuff, you know? So that was really cool. So I enjoyed that a lot. And then I read, oh shit, where are we at? Oh, wait. 3,000 to the Good, which is a Race Williams story by Carroll John Daly. Oh, never lets me down. Good stuff here. Good stuff. So, what this is about, well, a couple things. This book, first off, if you can see, the print's a lot bigger than in the other two books I showed you. And for, you know, a guy who's getting up there and his eyes are going, you know, this is such a nice, kind thing that this book would do for me. So that was awesome. But so this story, man. Oh, this is really good. This has everything. It has blackmail. It has money having to be exchanged, getting double crossed, going after who you got to go after, having a gun mall in it, a crazy dame. It ends on a super humorous note. It's just it's everything you want from a hard-boiled detective kind of deal. It's also written in first-person present tense, so it's like he's talking to you while he is deciding what to do, kind of deal. I had some stuff I wanted to. It's just he's such a bad mother effer. So like, you know, in a lot of these things, like people might haggle the price. Like when the PI's like, yeah, I'll do that for like $1,000. And they're like, I'll give you 800. And he's like, deal. This guy ain't like that. The guy offers him $100 and he's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. And he's like, well, you know, let's figure this out. You know, you got to. And he's like, nah, I don't have to do anything. And he's like, well, how about, because basically he needs to get a letter that these like mobster dudes are trying to blackmail this union boss guy. And if he doesn't bring them $10,000 that night, they're going to take the letter to the newspaper and have the newspaper print it. And he's like, well, how about this? How about you give me $2,500 if I bring you back the letter and the money? And if I only bring back the letter, you don't have to pay me nothing. And he's like, well, make it $1,500 and it's done. And he's like, I'm a one price man. We threw it back and forth for 5 or 10 minutes. And he just like goes on and on about how like this dude's gonna jip him and blah 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 blah, and he's not. Yes, sirree, Abe. And oh wait, yes, sirree. Abe and me had about a half a block ahead of the police for years. Like, just the writing is so, like, I don't want to say tough because that sounds really stupid, but it is. Like, I don't know another way of putting it. The dude is like a total badass and doesn't care. And later on, when he's sitting with these guys, they're like telling him all the stuff they're gonna do to him, and he says stuff like, then the three of them start talking at once, and it's all about what they're gonna do to me if I double cross them. They sure are nice, pleasant company, and the stuff they get off is worthy of Edgar Allan Poe. After they've cut me up in little pieces and hung me and filled me full of lead and one thing and the other, the leader pulls out another wise one. Have you got the money, he says. Not on me, I shoot back. When I pulled that, it sounds like all the monkeys in the zoo had cut loose at once. But what can they expect? A lad don't blow into a den like that, carting 10,000 with them. No, I ain't being done. They can't expect it. It's just like, oh, it's just so good. It's so good. He's such a good character. And it's funny, too, because, like, for some reason, I really don't know why this is. When I picture him, I picture this, like, short, weedy, thin dude with, like, a face that has miles on it, like scars, pock marks, a fat, bulbous, drunk nose, and little tiny, squinty little eyes. And he's always like that when I see him in my head, and his hat's always like perched up on his head, so you see this bit. It's just so funny because, like, when I picture what I think he looks like, there's no way he's this badass. And I think that's why I think he's super cool, because he's such a little shit and he's that badass. So, it's just good. And this also ends on a funny little joke note, which a lot of good hard-boiled detective stories do, especially when they're in first person. And it works. It makes sense and it's funny. So I can't stress enough how crucial Carroll John Daly was to the genre, and what a shame it is that he's been forgotten. So, and for those of you who don't know, when Black Mask was in its heyday, Carroll John Daly was outselling Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett. Like, if he had a story in the book, he got the cover because he was the money. And now it's like gone. Like, where the fuck is he? No one's heard of him. So definitely check him out if you can. His stuff is kind of a little hard to find. I think the false Burton Combs you could get online a bunch of different places for free. It's just a short story. It was the precursor to Race Williams. I think that's Three Gun Terry. Yeah, it might be. I'm not. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's Three Gun Terry. Three Gun Terry Mack, I think his name is. Anyway, I hope your Pentathon has been as enjoyable as mine. I think I'm going to